What would you do if the person meant to protect you was the one pushing you toward danger? That question burned in Virginia Nelson's mind as she stood on the ridge overlooking her father's ranch, tears running down her cheeks. The sharp echo of gunfire rolled through the valley below, but it was nothing compared to the words that had shattered her world only an hour earlier. Her father had given her a choice: either accept a marriage proposal from Reginald Foster by sundown tomorrow or pack her things and leave his house forever. Virginia wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders as if it could shield her from the pain crushing her chest. She was 22, alone in the Montana Territory in 1875, and her world had just turned upside down. Reginald Foster was 45, twice her age. Cold, harsh, and known for treating people like tools he could use. His first 2 wives had died under strange circumstances that everyone whispered about. But he was wealthy, and her father, Samuel Nelson, wanted his debts cleared. With Virginia's mother gone 5 years now, her father had drowned himself in whiskey and gambling. Now, she was the way out of his losses, but she would not sacrifice herself. As the sun sank behind the mountains, painting the sky orange and purple, she made her choice. She would leave, even if she had no idea where she would go. Before dawn the next morning, Virginia quietly packed a small bag, a change of clothes, her mother's silver hairbrush, the few coins she had saved, a little food, and the locket with her mother's portrait inside. She crept out of the house while her father slept off another long night. The dirt road to Silver Creek stretched 12 long miles ahead. She lifted her chin, squared her shoulders, and began walking. Her boots kicked up dust. Her throat grew dry. Her back ached beneath the weight of her bag. She did not look back. By noon, the sun beat down on her with no mercy. She stopped under a cottonwood tree to take a sip from her canteen. Her legs trembled with exhaustion. Silver Creek was still miles away. The sudden sound of hoofbeats made her freeze. A woman alone on a road like this could be at the mercy of anyone. Heart racing, she stepped behind the tree and peered out. A lone rider approached. A tall man on a strong black stallion. He rode like someone born in the saddle, broad-shouldered and steady. No more hiding. There was nowhere else to go. Virginia stepped out, trying to appear brave. Her bonnet shaded her eyes, but she knew he could see the dust on her dress, the strain in her face. The man slowed his horse and tipped his hat. His eyes were blue as the Montana sky, his skin sun-tanned, his voice deep and warm. "Ma'am," he said, "you're a long way from anywhere. Are you all right?" "I'm fine," she replied, though her trembling hands betrayed her. He studied her dusty dress and the small bag clutched tightly in her hand. His concern deepened. "Forgive me for saying this, but you don't look fine. Silver Creek is still 7 miles from here. It's a hot day for walking." Virginia hesitated. She had been warned all her life about strangers, outlaws, drifters, men with dark intentions. But this man's eyes held no threat. "I'm going to town to seek work," she said carefully. He nodded. "I'm headed that way myself. I'd be honored to offer you a ride." "The name's Kieran Murphy." Her heart skipped. Something about him felt genuine. "I'm Virginia Nelson," she said, her voice small. Kieran's smile was kind. He held out his hand. "Let me help you." She shook her head. "I don't want to be a burden." "It's no trouble," he said gently. "And my mother would haunt me if I left a lady walking in this heat." A small smile tugged at her lips at his honesty. After a moment, she nodded. "All right, thank you." Kieran swung down from his horse with ease and helped her climb up. His touch was steady and respectful. When he mounted behind her, he kept a careful distance so she wouldn't feel uncomfortable. The horse set off down the road toward Silver Creek. "May I ask why you left home?" Kieran said after a moment. Virginia swallowed. She didn't want to share her shame, but she had little reason to hide it. "My father arranged a marriage for me. To a man I cannot accept. He told me to agree or leave." Quote. Kieran grew still behind her. "Who?" "Reginald Foster. His reaction was immediate. His body tensed. "The banker," he muttered. "He's not a good man, Miss Nelson." "I know," she whispered. They continued toward town, the silence heavy but not uncomfortable. She could feel her exhaustion easing with each minute she didn't have to walk. She could feel safety again for the first time since leaving home. After a while, Kieran spoke again. "Do you have a place to stay, family, friends in Silver Creek?" "No," her voice trembled. "I only hoped to find work." Kieran was quiet, thinking. Then he said, "I have a small ranch 3 miles outside of town. There's a cabin out back no one uses anymore. You could stay there while you look for work, separate from the house, safe, no obligation." Virginia stiffened with surprise. "That's too generous. I cannot accept." "You wouldn't be accepting charity," he said softly. "Just a place to rest while you get on your feet. And someone once helped me when I had nowhere to go. I'm only passing along the kindness." Quote. She studied him over her shoulder. His expression was sincere, gentle, honest. "I would insist on working to earn my keep," she said. He smiled. "I wouldn't have it any other way." As the town of Silver Creek came into view, Virginia felt something she hadn't felt in months: hope. Virginia spent her first hours in Silver Creek going from store to store, asking for any kind of respectable work. Each time she stepped out of a shop, her hope dimmed a little more. The hotel had no positions. The dressmaker didn't need help. The general store already had someone for bookkeeping. By the time she reached the saloon, she was tired, dusty, and desperate. The saloon owner gave her a look that made her stomach twist. His eyes traveled over her in a way that felt wrong. "We could use a girl like you," he said. "Pretty face brings in good money." "I'm looking for respectable work," Virginia said firmly. He laughed. "Nothing wrong with serving drinks, honey. You'll come back when you're hungry enough." Her cheeks burned as she left. Outside, she leaned against the wall, fighting tears. She didn't regret leaving her father's house, but reality was harsh. A woman alone in a frontier town had few choices. "Miss Nelson?" Virginia looked up and found Kieran approaching, worry in his eyes. "No luck?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "None." He nodded, not judging, not pushing, just understanding. "My offer still stands," he said gently. "The cabin is yours if you want it." Her heart squeezed. Pride could only feed her so long. Safety mattered more. "I accept," she said quietly. "Just until I find work." "Good," he said, relief in his eyes. "Let's get you home." Home. The word warmed her. They rode out of town, the afternoon sun painting the plains in golden light. At the ranch, Kieran helped her down from the horse. His hands at her waist were steady and respectful, but the touch made her pulse flutter. He led her to the small cabin behind the main house. It was simple but clean, with a small bed, stove, and table. "It's perfect," she said. He exhaled, as if he'd been waiting to hear those words. "I'll bring you supplies from the kitchen," he said. "And if you need anything, the main house isn't far." That evening, Virginia joined him for supper. She insisted on cooking. Biscuits, bacon, eggs, and Kieran looked as if she'd fed him a feast. "You're a wonderful cook," he said, finishing his second helping. She blushed. "My mother taught me." Kieran's expression softened with understanding. "I lost both my parents before I was 16. I know what it feels like to miss someone every day." Something gentle settled between them then. Not pity, connection. Days turned into a routine. Virginia cooked, cleaned, and mended clothes. Kieran worked the cattle and repaired fences. Evenings became their favorite time. They sat on the porch watching sunsets, sharing stories of childhood and dreams they never said aloud to anyone else. Sometimes they read together. Sometimes they simply sat in quiet comfort. One night, Kieran arrived late from town with his jaw tight and eyes stormy. "I saw your father," he said as they sat down to supper. Virginia froze. "He was asking about you." Her stomach dropped. "What did he say?" Quote, Kieran hesitated, then spoke carefully. "He's still insisting you marry Foster. Foster says he'll forgive all your father's debts if the wedding happens." Virginia looked down, fighting the familiar twist of guilt. It wasn't her responsibility, but the weight of it still hurt. "There's more," Kieran said quietly. "Your father was drunk, saying terrible things, calling you ungrateful, saying you dishonored him." Virginia blinked hard. Even after everything, his anger could still reach her. "I'm sorry," Kieran said softly. "I shouldn't have told you." "No," she whispered. "I needed to know." Kieran reached across the table and took her hand. His touch was warm, strong. "You're safe here," he said. "I won't let anyone hurt you." The warmth from his hand traveled up her arm and settled in her chest. When he pulled away, something inside her ached at the loss of contact. That night, as she lay in bed in the small cabin, Virginia couldn't sleep. Her father was in town. Foster was still pushing for marriage. But what kept her awake was something else. The way Kieran had looked at her. The way his thumb brushed her knuckles. The way her heart had leapt. The next morning, she hung laundry behind the main house when she heard wheels crunching over gravel. A fancy buggy approached. A well-dressed woman stepped down, beautiful, polished, confident. Kieran came from the barn, wiping his hands. He did not look pleased. "Virginia," he said with a strained voice, "this is Mrs. Helena Whitfield." Mrs. Whitfield's eyes swept Virginia from head to toe, her polite smile thin and sharp. "How do you do, Miss Nelson?" she said smoothly. "I'm well, thank you," Virginia replied. "Kieran didn't mention you had help," the woman said. "She's a friend staying in the cabin," Kieran said firmly. "Interesting," Mrs. Whitfield replied, her tone suggesting she found it anything but. Inside, she laid out papers for Kieran. "These investors are offering a generous deal. Your mine shares could earn you $20,000. Virginia nearly gasped. $20,000 was a fortune. "I'm not selling," Kieran said, jaw tight. Mrs. Whitfield leaned in close to him. Too close. Virginia carried in the coffee, suddenly feeling like an outsider in her own safe place. Later, when the woman left, Virginia finally asked, "You own part of a mine?" Kieran scratched his neck, looking sheepish. "It's not something I talk about. I used the first profits to buy this ranch." "And Mrs. Whitfield, she seems very interested." Kieran's voice hardened. "In more than business." "But I've never encouraged her." Virginia's cheeks warmed with an emotion she didn't want to name. That evening, as they sat on the porch, she asked softly, "Why did you help me that day on the road?" This time he answered, "When I was 16, a rancher named Thomas Blackburn found me sleeping in his barn. I had nothing. He took me in, taught me everything. When you said your father threatened to throw you out, I heard Thomas's voice again, then open your door to her." Quote, Virginia swallowed the lump in her throat. "You honored his kindness." "And I'd do it again," Kieran said gently. Their eyes met. The air tightened. For a moment, she thought he might kiss her. But he stood suddenly. "We should turn in." That night, Virginia lay awake, wondering about the look in his eyes, the warmth in his voice, the growing bond between them. But morning brought something far worse. Raised voices. Angry shouts. She ran outside to see her father, Reginald Foster, and two rough-looking men on horseback confronting Kieran. "She's my daughter," Samuel Nelson snarled, "and I'm taking her home." Kieran stood firm, calm, but ready. "She's not a child," he said, "and she's not going anywhere she doesn't choose." Virginia stepped forward, heart pounding. "I'm not going with you!" Her father's face twisted with rage. Foster stepped closer, cold eyes fixed on her. "Miss Nelson, your father's debts will be cleared if you agree to marry me." "No," she said firmly. All hell broke loose. Samuel shouted. Foster sneered. The two hired men grew uneasy, muttering they weren't paid for kidnapping. They rode off. Power shifted. "Get out," Kieran said, his voice low and dangerous. "All of you." Quote. Her father pointed at her, shaking with rage. "You're no daughter of mine. Rot here with your cowboy." He rode off, Foster following with a cold glare that promised trouble. The moment they were gone, Virginia's legs weakened. Kieran caught her, steadying her. "You were brave," he murmured. but her heart pounded with fear. "They'll be back," she whispered. "Maybe," Kieran said, holding her close. "But you won't face anything alone." The day after her father's furious visit, Virginia couldn't shake the tension coiled tight in her chest. She tried to focus on her chores, but her hands trembled with every dish she washed and every shirt she folded. Kieran pretended to work as usual, yet she could see the worry in the set of his shoulders and the way he kept glancing toward the road. By late morning, the worry became reality. Virginia was outside hanging laundry when she heard a buggy approaching, but instead of a threat, it was Mrs. Peterson from the general store. She hurried toward Virginia with a troubled look. "I don't mean to pry," Mrs. Peterson said, lowering her voice, "but something's happening in town. Folks are saying your father is drinking heavier than ever, and Foster, well, he's stirring up trouble." Virginia's stomach tightened. What kind of trouble? Before Mrs. Peterson could answer, Kieran came from the barn. "Everything all right?" he asked. Mrs. Peterson shook her head. "I thought you should know before it reaches your doorstep. People are talking, and not kindly. Just be careful." She offered Virginia a sympathetic squeeze of the arm before climbing back into her buggy and driving off. That evening, while Virginia prepared supper, Kieran paced the kitchen like a caged animal. "I don't like this," he muttered. "Foster's not a man who gives up." "I know," she whispered. Kieran stopped pacing, turned to her, and gently lifted her chin so she'd look at him. "You're safe here," he said firmly. "Whatever comes, I'll face it with you." The warmth in his voice, the quiet strength in his eyes, stirred something deep inside her. "Kieran," she breathed. This time, he didn't pull away. His hand slid to her cheek, warm and steady. He leaned closer, slow, as if giving her every chance to move away. She didn't. When his lips brushed hers, the world seemed to still around them. It was tender, careful, full of everything they hadn't said out loud. When he drew back, she saw the truth in his eyes. "I care for you, Virginia," he said softly. "More than I ever planned to." Her heart swelled. "I care for you too." But their moment of peace didn't last. The next morning, raised voices shattered the quiet. Kieran rushed out first. Virginia followed, her heart hammering. Her father had returned. But this time, he was not alone. Foster sat on his horse beside him, and two more rough men stood behind them. Samuel Nelson looked wild, half drunk, half furious. "She's coming with me," he shouted. "I'll drag her home if I have to." "No," Virginia said, stepping beside Kieran. "I'm not your property. You gave me a choice, and I chose to leave." Foster dismounted, his expression cold and calculating. "This isn't a request, Miss Nelson," he said. "Your father's debts must be paid." Quote, her father lunged toward her, but Kieran moved faster. He stepped between them, one hand on his holster, the other braced protectively in front of Virginia. "You need to leave," Kieran said, calm but firm. "Now." One of the hired men spoke up. "Nelson, we didn't sign up for this. We ain't forcing a woman." They turned and rode away, leaving her father and Foster alone, angry and exposed. "This isn't over," Samuel hissed. "You'll regret this, both of you." They rode off in a cloud of dust. The moment they disappeared, Virginia sagged. Kieran pulled her into his arms without hesitation. "You did nothing wrong," he whispered. "Nothing." That night, fear hung over the ranch like a storm cloud. But Kieran stayed close, checking the windows, watching the road, sitting by the door with his gun resting beside him. Virginia barely slept. Morning came with a knock at her cabin door. "Virginia," Kieran called softly. His voice sounded heavy. "We need to go into town." "Why? What happened?" He hesitated. "Your father, he's dead." The world blurred around her. Samuel Nelson, gone, despite everything. His cruelty, his anger, his threats. The news struck her like a blow. He had been a hard man, but he had been her father. Kieran guided her to his horse gently, as if she might break. When they reached town, people stared, whispered, pointed. Inside the sheriff's office, she saw her father's body laid on a table, covered with a sheet. Sheriff Davis removed the cloth for her. Virginia trembled as she looked down. His face was calm, The bitterness gone, the anger gone. Tears filled her eyes. "I never wanted this." Kieran held her shoulders, steadying her. But grief was soon followed by another shock. Sheriff Davis sighed. "There's a problem. Foster is telling everyone that Kieran had motive. He claims you two were living in sin. He says Kieran vowed to take care of the problem." Quote. Virginia gasped. "That's a lie! Kieran never." "People are riled up," Sheriff Davis said. "Some want to form a vigilance committee." Virginia clung to Kieran's arm. "Tell him, Sheriff. He never left the ranch last night. We were both there." Quote. Kieran squeezed her hand, grateful for her strength. Before the sheriff could reply, the doctor hurried in with something in his hand. "We found this under Nelson's body," Doc Stevens said. A silver money clip. Engraved with the initials H.W. Virginia's eyes widened. "Helena Whitfield," she whispered. Kieran's jaw tightened. "I knew she'd been pushing too hard." The sheriff swore under his breath. "I'll question her." But Helena Whitfield wasn't at the hotel. She had fled. Soon, a chase began. Kieran, Virginia, the sheriff, and his deputies racing across the rugged Montana land to catch the fleeing woman. They found her carriage struggling in the dangerous river crossing. Kieran plunged his horse into the flooded water, fighting to save the carriage team. Together, he and the sheriff dragged Helena out, drenched, furious, and defeated. Back in town, everything came pouring out. She had argued with Samuel Nelson in the alley behind the saloon. He threatened to expose her scheme to frame Kieran and steal his mine shares. In a moment of rage and desperation, she shot him. The town turned cold toward Foster, who left quietly within days. Helena was jailed, awaiting trial. Virginia stood beside her father's grave at his quiet funeral, a handful of neighbors, the sheriff, and Kieran at her side. She whispered one final goodbye. Later, as they walked away, Kieran touched her hand. "What happens now?" she asked softly. "That depends," he said. "What do you want?" Virginia looked up at him, tears still in her eyes, but strength in her heart. "I want a life I choose," she said. "I want peace. I want a home. And," her voice softened, "I want you." Kieran stopped walking. Emotion filled his eyes. "And you have me," he said, voice thick. "If you'll have me." She nodded. "Yes, with all my heart." He reached into his pocket and opened a small velvet box. Inside sat a simple, beautiful ring. "It was my mother's," he said. "I've been carrying it for days." Her breath caught as he knelt on one knee. "Virginia Nelson, will you marry me?" "Yes," she whispered through tears. "Yes." Quote. The town cheered when they married weeks later on Kieran's ranch, their ranch. Virginia sold her father's land to Kieran, and together they expanded the home. The celebration lasted long into the night. And 5 years later, Virginia sat on their porch, rocking their infant daughter, while their 3-year-old son giggled, as Kieran taught him to ride a pony. Their land stretched wide before them, peaceful and bright beneath the open Montana sky. "Did you see, Mama?" little Samuel cried. "I rode all by myself." Quote, "You are very brave," she said, smiling. Kieran lifted the boy into his arms, kissed Virginia softly, and whispered, "Just like his mother." As the sun set, painting the sky in gold and purple, Virginia leaned against her husband and whispered, "I love you." "I love you," Kieran replied. Always. From a father's threat, to a dusty road, to a cowboy's open door, she had found everything she ever dreamed of.